our live resume review series. I'm Clary Johnson, your host. This is a web series where I'm showing young professionals best practices around resume writing and my personal approach towards building a resume so that you can take these learnings and apply them to your own resume and increase your chances of landing an interview and, of course, the job. I am showing you how to build a resume using the same template I've used since undergrad. This template and approach to resume writing has helped me land top paying jobs at leading organizations. It has also helped students that I've mentored do the same. So, last week, we talked about how to structure and write your skills section. The previous week, we really talked about framing your resume and actually putting it into this template. So if you missed it, you can check out my YouTube channel at Savvy CMO. That's SAVVY CMO. I'll drop it in the chat. This week, we're zooming in on the experience section. And I know everyone's excited about this because the experience section is usually the biggest section on the resume. It takes up the most space. And so I'm going to show you an easy framework that I use to break down my experience into bite-sized, rollet sock, rollet sock, rock solid bullet points that recruiters love. And before we get started, let's do a quick review of where we were last week. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to share my screen. Okay, so this is where we came from. So when we first received this resume, this is what it looked like. Again, as I go through these resumes, these are real people and these are real resumes. So I have changed the titles as well as the locations where these folks have worked just to protect their privacy. So that we're looking at Daenerys Stormborn's resume. And as you can see, we have lots and lots of great experience here. And so this is the original resume we received. And let me show you what we're working on today. So today, this is what we are working on. Last week, I told you I was going to go get some information, come back with a skills section. And so that's exactly what I did. You'll notice that I have a few questions in the margins here. That is for our friend. Once we send this to her, for her to take a look at those, respond to those questions, and then when we receive the updated resume, then we can make those changes. So as you can see, during the first week, we really went through and we updated the formatting of this resume. We put it into our template. Last week, we worked on the skill section. Now, last week, I believe we may have only took a look at the first two bullets or the first bullet. So I'm going to walk through what we did last week since we went live last week during the in between that time to now. And I apologize, my brain is going at a million miles an hour today. So we're going to review everything that we did between last week and this week. And then we'll jump into the related work experience section. So let's take a look and zoom in on the skill section. Um, Last week when we talked, I really talked about your skills section as really needing to highlight a few really critical factors. The first factor is going to be your technical hard skills. The second factor is the organization skills. The third is communication skills. And then finally, something that motivates you, something that gets the recruiter or the hiring manager into your brain as to what you like to do, what kind of environments you thrive in. And again, all of these skills, as well as our experience, the way that we describe our experience, and even the experiences that we choose to highlight, really need to reflect back on that job description. And so when I went through and did a little bit of light editing on this, I was looking at the actual job description that our friend shared with us, and I'm going to share that with you today. And then I was also looking at some of the skills here at the bottom to inform. Sorry, excuse me. I was looking at some of the experience here at the bottom to inform which skills we were going to highlight here at the top. So it was a twofold kind of a process. Today, we are going to look at the actual job description. And then in a future live stream, what I'll do is I'll do a specific live stream just about how to study a job description. I know a lot of people, we either skip over this part or we only look at the job description because we want to get the keywords that we want to stuff into our resume, but there is a better way to read job descriptions that finds a balance between both. We do want to use keywords in our resume because, as we know, there are going to be bots that are reading this and filtering us out. But we also want to look at the job description to inform what kinds of experiences that we want to highlight in our resume, as well as really using some of the language. And I'm not just talking about keywords, guys. I'm really talking about what kinds of programs or what kinds of collaboration is going to be happening in this job. What kind of skills and experience is this job really looking for us to highlight in our resume? And how do they actually talk about these skills? We want to take that and we want to weave that language into the way that we talk about our skills. And really, we're going to take the same language. And if we are going to be applying to similar jobs at other organizations, we will use a lot of what we're going to find is that a lot of this language is very consistent between these jobs, right? So we really want to be able to study this job description. We want to understand what the employer cares about, and then also take those insights and apply them to our resume so that we increase our chances of landing the interview. So let's zoom in on this skills section. And we've changed this to clinical program management qualifications and capabilities. And the clinical program management, this part is really important because we want the person on the other end, we want the recruiter or the hiring manager to know that one, we read the job description, two, we know what job we're applying for, and three, that we actually have taken the time to customize our resume to fit the specific job, right? So we want to make sure that since we're really specifying that these are clinical program management qualifications and capabilities, then all the skills in this section really need to feed into that. Okay, so let's take a look at what we have. So we have licensed therapists with experience working with children's mental health facilities, working in children's mental health facilities. So this is a very important bullet because it's critical for this job description. So once we look at that, you'll see one of the things that's really important for this job is that you have to be licensed. And so that's one of those things, it's going to rule you out immediately, right? If I am not licensed, I am not going to be getting this job, right? So if I, as a communications professional, goes to try to apply for this therapy, it doesn't matter how much experience I have, right? It doesn't matter how great my accolades are or the people that can vouch for me, my references. It doesn't matter all the great things that they want to say. If I'm not licensed in therapy, I am not getting this job. And so we want to make sure that we make it as easy as possible for our recruiters. Remember, they're going to be looking at dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of interviews of resumes every single day. And so we want to make it as easy as possible for them to choose us, right? So we are licensed. That's first and foremost. The hiring manager is going to read that and say, okay, this person is at least qualified, so I can continue to read the rest of the resume. Then we have a proven ability to develop, coordinate, and deliver quality target case management action plans for children and their families, right? So remember a few of the things that we said in our skills section before that we really want to make sure our components is how well do we know the the skill, right? So we have a proven ability, which means we've done it before. Does that make sense? And then how did we let's describe the skill, right? So the skill is we have developed, coordinated, and delivered high quality targeted case management action plans. And to what end? For children and their families, right? So this job description, and you're going to see, is really specific to children and their families. And so we want to make sure that these are one of the places where it's not necessarily just keyword stuffing. It's that this person has this experience. She's worked with children, she's worked with their families to help them deliver, to help them to follow targeted case management action plans. Okay, so this bullet here, we would describe this as a organizational skill, right? She's able to develop it, coordinate it, and deliver it. This third bullet is about is about following best practices within the industry. So we have experienced with following trauma-enforced best practices to distribute and analyze assessments, create integrated treatment plans, and establish outcome-driven metrics. Okay, so we qualified the experience, so we have some experience, right? Doesn't necessarily tell you the depth of experience, but we know that she's done this before. And then we have found, or we have described the actual skill itself. So the skill is that she's able to follow trauma informed best practices to distribute and analyze assessments, create integrated treatment plans, and establish outcome driven metrics. Okay. So this is going to be really important. I would probably toss this into the bucket of technical skills for, because these are going to be skills that are specific to the industry or to the job that she's applying for, right? So I have no idea as a communications professional how to follow trauma informed best practices. I understand how to distribute analyze assessments, but I have no experience creating integrated treatment plans. So those are very specific, hard technical skills that this person could put on their resume. Leadership ability. So this is one of the bullets that I specified in our previous video that we want to make sure that we have in our skills section. Now, it's not a make or break, but if we can show that we have a leadership ability, and when we talk about leadership ability, we're talking about ability organizing teams, leading teams to success, being a part of a team, and coming up with an idea that really helps to solve a problem. That's leadership ability. Raising our hand to lead a project. A lot of people think that when we talk about management, that management just means managing people. Oh no. Okay. There are different levels of management, right? So I can manage a project management. That's leadership. I still have to work with people within my organization to drive this project to success. I need to be able to delegate. I need to be able to communicate, and I need to be able to inspire people to help me to achieve a goal, right? That is leadership ability. So even if I have never managed one person in my single life, I still have a leadership ability. I understand how to manage projects and drive them to success. I am a leader. Okay. Then, of course, we have people management. So the first one was project management. Now we have people management. People management is what people traditionally think of when they think of leadership, meaning that I have a team of people that I manage, and they know that I am their manager or their leader, and they come to me for direction. Right. That's people management. Now, with that being said, here's where I get a lot. And actually, there's a student I'm mentoring now who we were working on her resume, and she's like, "Well, I only led. It was only it was only one person. It was only two people." So this is where psychologically we've got to get out of this habit of diminishing or minimizing what we have accomplished because we think it's not big enough, right? So, two people, if you have led two people, if you've led one person to any kind of successful outcome, you have been a people manager, right? Even if your team is not 10 people, 100 people, you've been able to manage one person to success. That is a start, right? And now, because I can see that you've able to manage one person to success, now I trust you with managing 5 people to success. Then I can trust you with managing 10 people to success. Then I can trust you to managing 100 people to success. And now all of a sudden you've elevated from a people manager to an organizational manager, right? Now you're managing an organization or a program, right? Or a portfolio or the entire company, right? When we think about the C suite, CEOs, CTOs, CFOs, right? They are responsible for leading an entire organization. So, really, when we talk about leadership ability, I want you to really take it down to really the bare bones. Like, think about times when you've raised your hand for a project that no one else wanted to raise their hand for. right? Think about a time when you stepped up within an organization or a club that you're a part of, right? These are leadership skills and leadership abilities. So I've highlighted this for our friend because I didn't quite see anything in her experience, and I wanted to give her an opportunity to tell us about some of the times when she's actually led a team or a group of people or a person to success. And then our next bullet is demonstrated interpersonal savvy within collaborative work environments to ensure clients receive relevant, accessible, and quality care in community-based and in-home environments. Okay, so again, we've qualified it, so she has a demonstrated skill, which means we've done it before. So what you're going to see a lot is we're saying the same thing, but we're using those words in very different ways. And one thing I always challenge you is to never use the same word twice. And the reason why I challenge you to do that is because it gets you out of this habit of getting lazy with your resume, right? If I put experience with experience with experience with experience with, that's a really boring reading experience for your hiring manager or your recruiter or whoever's reading your resume, right? It's monotonous. It's the same thing over and over again. You have experience. Okay, I get it. You have experience, right? We want to demonstrate that we have the capability to really explore our vocabulary and find different words and terms that are going to help us to describe what we've done and what we've accomplished, right? We deserve that. Our experience deserves that. It deserves us taking the extra step and taking the additional time to really create beautiful language around it. And so I have a I have a template that I use. It's not a template, it's more of a resource with a list of resume words that you can use. And there are lots of different resume words. I have a list for the skills section as well as for the experience section because they're a little bit different that you can use. And these are more than 40 words just for your skills section. So if that's something you're interested in, please DM me and we'll get you set up. All right. So this demonstrated interpersonal savvy, right? So we talked about demonstrated, we've qualified the skill. We've said that the skill is this interpersonal savvy, right? So that's communications within a collaborative work environments to ensure, right, to what end. So we've shown that this person has ability to work within teams, and then to what end to ensure that clients receive relevant, accessible, and quality care in community-based and in-home environments. Okay. Okay. So this one again, this would be a I would consider this to be a skill that involves communication as well as collaboration. And then here we have mastery of accurate and timely record keeping, data collection, and reports writing. Again, mastery tells us we've done it before, but now we have this mastery of it. I've highlighted this to just ask my friend if this is true, but also to see if there's anything else specific that we can say about these particular skills, right? So if I talk about timely record keeping, using what applications, what tools, SAP, right? If I say SAP, well, that's a light bulb for me as an employer because I'm likely using SAP in some kind of way. SAP is a very big organization. If you don't know much about it, take some time, go ahead and Google it. SAP is one of um, those softwares that a lot of organizations rely on for um, tracking data, tracking finances. We have data collection as well. Data collection using what tools? And these might be tools, again, guys, that are specific to your industry. And then, of course, reports writing, using what tools? Using Microsoft Words, Excel, right? Using Google Docs. How are we writing these reports? Okay, so we've highlighted that. We're going to come back to this and we're going to make this stronger. And then we have finally excellent verbal and written communication skills, including bilingual capabilities in English and Spanish. This was the first bullet that we talked about. And we talked about this last week, where we really talked about, okay, we quantified it. She has excellent skill set in this. And then we have the verbal, written, and communication skills. And then we've quantified it as being, or we've qualified as being bilingual capabilities in English and in Spanish. Okay, so now that we've zoomed in on the skills section, let's move into our topic of today, which is the related work experience. This is probably one of my favorite places to start just because you see so much transformation um, in this section when working with mentees and with students, because a lot of times what I get is this resume is very well done in terms of the quantity of information and the quality of information that's here. But typically, what I'll see is like really bare, right? And so I like to get into the heads of the folks that I work with and say, well, what was that thing that you did? Why did you do it? What was the outcome and the impact? And helping them to really build out this related work experience section. Because then when they take a look at it at the end of it, it's this feeling of, or this moment of realization that, wow, I've done so much more than what I give myself credit for. So we're going to take a look at the related work experience. And we've already done some formatting, and we'll take another look at this at the end when we do our quality check. But let's go through some of these, the first experience. Okay. So right here we have targeted case management that facilitates assessment of care planning and coordination of service to 20 children and families. Okay, so with our experience section, what we're really there is there is a formula or that I like to follow when developing my bullet points, and you may have heard of it before. It's a very similar formula to what we use for interviewing, which is why, again, I think your resume is the first step. If you're wanting to have more successful interviews, you need to start with having a rock solid resume, right? Because this is where it starts. The interview is a conversation about your resume, right? So the framework that I use is something we call PAR. So PAR equals problem, action, result. Okay. Um, when we talk about PAR, we really want to ensure a few things. One, we want to make sure we really know that we're solving. Two, we want to describe the action that we took, and we want to make it as clear as possible that we did that action. So, another thing that we see commonly in resumes is we'll talk about what we as a team did or what other people did. Like, no, this is it's okay. This is our chance. This is our opportunity to brag about what we've accomplished. So it's about what we've done, right? And then finally, result. We want to make that as specific and as quantitative as possible, meaning we want to use as many numbers as possible to quantify those results. What this means is that while you're in those jobs, while you're in those organizations and you're taking on those projects, we really need to be keeping a record of what we've done and what the outcomes were so that we can brag about them later in our resume. Okay. So, what we have here, I'm going to go through, and we're going to identify the problem. Okay. So, the problem, okay. First, we're going to identify the problem. So, targeted case management that facilitates assessment of care planning and coordination of service to 20 children and families. Okay. So the problem is that we need to facilitate assessment of care planning and coordination of service. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to highlight that in this red color. So what was the action? Well, the action was targeted case management. We're going to highlight that. We're going to highlight that in yellow. And what was the result? The result was that about 20 children and families benefited from this work. I'm going to highlight that in green. Okay. So off the bat, this person has all the elements for this PAR framework in the first bullet. So let's go through the additional bullets and take a look. So this person ensured that medically necessary services are accessed, coordinated, and delivered in a strength-based, individualized, youth, family-driven, culturally and linguistically relevant manner, that services and supports are guided by the needs of the child or youth. Okay, so this bullet can use some work, and so can the first bullet, but we're going to just first we're just going through, we're highlighting the problem, the action, and result. So let's find the problem in this second bullet. So ensure that medically necessary services are accessed, coordinated, and delivered in a relevant manners. So okay, so I'm going to highlight this in red as being the problem, right? So we have some medically necessary services that need to be accessed, coordinated, and delivered. And so that's the problem. The action is that we insured it, right? That was the action. So we're going to highlight that in yellow. And the results, hmm. So we don't really have a strong results statement here, but I'm going to highlight this one because the result should be, right, that not only were we able to deliver these services, however, the services were delivered in a way that it was guided by the needs of the children and the youth. Okay, so something that we're missing here is we're missing some something that's quantifiable. So how many children or youth, right? And also the action. The action is a bit weak, so we're going to come back to that one. Okay, so let's go to bullet number 3. Participates in the gathering of information necessary for the creation of coordinated care documents. And then we have MH assessment and treatment plan outcome measures, etc. Okay, so whenever we see etc., we want to remove that immediately from our vocabulary. What that means is that we got lazy and we decided to put etc. instead of saying exactly what it is that we did. Okay, and it's okay if we can't fit everything on there, right? Then we need to find some language that can summarize what we've done. Okay. Don't get lazy. Do the hard work. Okay. All right. So we're going to look at find the problem, the action, and the results. Okay. So the problem was that we needed to gather the information necessary for the creation of coordinated care documents. So that's the problem. The action that we took is that we participated and we don't talk about the results at all. So we already know that one of the questions we're going to ask is, well, what was the result of that? Okay. And when we talk about results, guys, results can be in the form of feedback surveys that you received. It can be in the form of an increase in satisfaction. So if your organization sends out surveys, if you work with clients and they send your clients surveys about their results of working with you, satisfaction, it would be something that would be on that list. Um, um, Metrics include how much or how many, right? So here we had 20, a little bit about 20 children and families, right? Um, so we really want to think quantitatively as much as possible. Okay. And then let's take a look at this next bullet. Monitor progress to determine effectiveness of interventions and determine the need for supplementary or supportive services. Modifies the level of service provision to meet youth and family needs. Okay, so off bat, this is 2 sentences. So these should be separate bullets. Okay. Um, One thing that I like to do is with bullets, I do like to create supporting bullets. So I will use sub bullets, something like that, right? So this is a sub bullet, right? So we have monitor progress to determine effectiveness of interventions and determine the need for supplementary or supportive services. Okay, so what was the problem? We needed to determine the effectiveness of interventions and the need for supplementary complementary or supportive services. So we're going to highlight that in red. The action is that we monitored the progress, and then the result, we don't really have the results. Okay, so something's missing here. And we don't want to skip over the results because those are what the results are what's going to make your resume stand out. And it's what's going to make it feel so much stronger and so much um, more data driven, right? It's going to show that you understand how to use metrics to inform your results, right? Okay, so let's take a look. Now, this isn't going to actually be the sub bullet, but I just put it here to split up and to show you an example of what a sub bullet will look like. Modifies the level of service provision to meet youth family needs. I would say this bullet's gonna we're gonna work on that one. Okay, we're gonna come back to that one. And then this bullet here demonstrates an understanding of confidentiality policies, mandated child abuse reporting, and duty to warn procedures. So, confidentiality policies, mandated warn procedures. I'm going to highlight that as the problem and demonstrate an understanding. Now, with this being said, even though I am highlighting this as a bullet, this feels more like a skill to me. The reason why is because, one, remember when we look at our skills section, what's the kind of demonstrated interpersonal savvy, demonstrated understanding. So here we've quantified how well we know the skill. And then the skill is that we understand confidentiality policies, mandated child abuse reporting, and duty to warn procedures. That sounds very similar to this bullet, which is experience with following trauma-informed best practices to distribute, analyze, assessment, etc., right? So I'm actually going to take this bullet and I'm going to move it here. I'm going to see, we're going to come back to that and see if there's something we want to do with it. Okay. So let's take a deeper look at some of these bullet points. Okay. So targeted case management so I want to understand specifically, like, what did we do here? Right? Targeted case management. Well, how did what, how did I how did I deliver on targeted case management? What was involved? What tools did we use? Right? What was it? What is targeted case management? I'm not sure. I could Google it, but I'm gonna ask our friend to give us some feedback. Okay. So she did some targeted case management, but we don't really know what that means. And that's the other thing. We want to make sure that our resume is easy to understand, right? So if I give my resume to a recruiter within my industry, I want to be able to give that same resume to a recruiter in a different industry. And I want them to be able to understand what I'm talking about. Um, I should be able to read this as someone who is not in this space and understand what this person did. And so we're going to highlight that and we're going to ask them specifically, what did we do? Okay, so targeted management that facilitates assessment of care planning and coordination of service. So this feels more like what she probably did, right? She facilitated the assessment of care planning and coordination of service, right? By through targeted case management. Does that make sense? So I'm going to move this around a little bit. And that's a and we may want to actually use this as a let me back up. The what by for model is really helpful for us in structuring our sentences, right? So I took this action by doing XYZ for XYZ outcome, right? So what by for. So let me go ahead and I'm going to add that to. So each bullet should follow a what, by, for, mom sequence. Okay. So what did I do? How did I do it? And for what? Right. That's the PAR framework. So, and then we also want to just take a look at some of the verbs. So facilitates, this is a present job. So we want to make sure that we're using the current tense, the right tense. My recommendation is either to make everything past tense or make everything past tense except for your present experience. So where it says provides, this should be provided, right? Because this already happened. We finished this in July of 2019. So we don't currently provide this, right? So everything should be either past tense or everything should be past tense except for the current job of the current role. Okay. So in her current role, she facilitates the assessment of care planning and coordination of service. And then we're actually going to move this forward. And then we're going to get rid of this little squiggly. So it's either over or under for, and usually we want to say with more than. So if it's more than, we could say more than 20 children and families. So if it's 21, we could say more than. If it's less than, then we want to be as specific as possible. So we might just say 20 children and families. Okay. So let's just say, I'm going to ask her how many children and family specifically. This is going to tell us whether or not we're going to use more than, or we're going to just take out the squiggly and just keep it at 20 children and families. Okay. The other thing we might want to think about when we think about metrics is, in addition to feedback results, how much, how many, is how often. So she might say something like facilitates assessment of care planning and coordinated services for 20 children and family. It may say something like facilitates weekly or quarterly or monthly or daily, right? Those are metrics that are going to strengthen our language. So we're going to ask a question here and we're going to say, how often? How often do you do this? Okay. Okay, so she facilitates the assessment of care planning coordination services of, we're going to figure out how many children and families by using, and we're going to actually not use the word using, but I'm just putting that here as a bridge for us for now, because we need to get a little bit more information about what we mean by targeted case management. Okay. By using, and then two. So it's kind of funny because now that we've rearranged it, what I really feel that we're missing is we did all of this excellent care and coordination, but to what end? To what end? Why did we do this? What was the benefit, right? What was the benefit or what or outcome? All right. So now we're going to take a look at this second section, and I'm going to remove the highlights so that we just have a clean working space. Okay, so we insured, so she ensure that medically necessary services are accessed, coordinated, and delivered in strength-based individual use. Okay, so this is a lot. Okay, so we're gonna have to snap this down quite a bit. Um, One of the things we want to make sure when we're writing is that we're using strong action verbs. What does that mean? What is action versus passive tense? Don't know, go look it up. And in fact, I may make a resource for you to show you the difference between active tense and passive tense. Passive tense is are accessed, right? Are accessed by whom? Are accessed, right? Um, this when we use terms like this, it's usually because we're missing something, right? And what we're missing is the subject, the person who actually did the accessing, right? So we want to ensure that children have access to, or are enabled to access, or are empowered to access, or are empowered to X, Y, and Z, right? So when we actually move into active tense, then it may even change our sentence structure a little bit in how we actually describe the thing that we did. Okay. So, and in fact, it's kind of interesting because it says access, ensure that services are accessed, coordinated, and delivered in strength based. So this sounds more like people management. Like she's making sure that someone else is able to access, coordinate, and deliver, right? So we need a little bit more information. So I'm going to say, who's doing the accessing? Who is this for? A client or a team member? Going to need a little bit more information. Um, or is she the one who's coordinating, delivering? Because if that's the case, then we're just going to start here with coordinated, delivered, strength-based, individualized, right? We're going to take a look at this youth slash family driven and culturally and linguistically relevant manner. Okay, that's a lot. So wherever we see a slash, we need to break this up, right? So delivered in a strength-based, individualized way, and I'm just going to add some placeholder text because we're gonna rewrite all of this. Um, ensure that it's delivered in this way. Um, I guess it would be culturally and linguistically that services are supported, are guided by the needs of the children and the youth. Okay, I'm gonna break this up a little bit. The individualized way for children and their families, right? And then we could even say, go ahead and put in a text. And we can even say, um, children and their families. And this is, we want to we want to include that it's culturally and linguistically relevant. So this actually feels like it should be up here, right? So access coordinated, delivered in a strength-based, individualized, culturally and linguistically relevant way, right? So we have manner here. So I'm going to move this up. Individualized, culturally way for children and their families. Okay. That services and supports are guided by the needs of the child slash youth. Okay, this feels messy. Okay. Ensure that medically necessary service are access coordinated, delivered in a strength-based, individualized, culturalistically and linguistically relevant way for children and their families. I mean, this just feels like it should have a period, right? Um, that services and supports are guided by the needs of the child and youth. So really what we want to say here is that we're delivering we're well, what do we even say? Yeah, we're delivering medically necessary services in a way that is guided by the child, right? I'm actually going to remove this for now. And I'm going to add it as I'm just going to add it as I'm gonna put it here as a comment because we want to come back to that, right? Okay, let's move on to the next bullet. Participates in the gathering of information necessary for the creation of coordinated care doc. So participates is a very loose term. So I want to understand, what does she mean by this? So in what way did you participate? Participate. Um, was this a collaborative project? Who else was involved? When we talk about metrics, stating who you worked with is a part of being metric driven. So you could say, I worked with a human resources department, or I worked with, the sales team or the R&D team. I worked across the organization. I worked cross functionally, right? When we say participate, we want to be more specific about who we were participating with, right? Those are metrics that are going to make our resume stronger. Okay, so participates with who in the gathering of information necessary for the creation of coordinated care documents. Okay, so I want to say, how is she gathering in the gathering? Like, what does this entail? How are we doing? How are we gathering? Are we using any specific tools to gather? Are we are we creating and distributing surveys? Right? Are we working cross functionally? Coordinate? How are we doing the gathering of information necessary? This is weak. What is it? What is necessary information? I don't know. You say it's necessary, but we're not taking the time to say what it is. So is it necessary? I don't know, right? So what is information? What is necessary information? Can we be more specific here? Right? Of what information is necessary for the creation of coordinated care documents, right? And we need to know what's the information. So we need to know how who we worked with, how we gathered it, what we gathered, right? And then we need to understand to what end, because that feels like it's missing here. It's like, why, right? Or what was the outcome? How many coordinated care documents, right? Were we able to create? Did we do the creating? Did someone else do the creating? Did we work with another department? Did we just hand off the information and they did the creating? Like, these are the kinds of the things that we want to know. So here we're going to ask the question, how many care documents and who did the creating? Okay. And so I think it sounds like this MH assessment and treatment plan and outcome measures might have been the information necessary for the coordination of the care documents. So we might be able to say participated or participates, and actually we're going to change that verb too, in the gathering of assessments, treatment plans, and outcome measures to create coordinated care documents. I'm also going to say, how often do we do this? Is daily? Are we creating coordinated care documents every day, every week, every month? How often? Okay. And then modifies the level of service provision to meet youth family needs. How? So that was here. So it sounds like this is after we've done this, then we do this part. I'm just going to say how. Um, how do you do the modification? Okay. So this is hard work, guys, right? Like, it's not a situation where you come in, you put some ideas on paper, and then now you've got a resume. We really need to be thinking through who we're working with, what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and what the outcomes are, right? We really need to be thinking about telling the story in as specific of a way as possible so that the person on the other end can see the wealth of your experience. So our friend actually has asked us to move a lot quicker on this resume because they're going to be applying for jobs in a couple of weeks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the next between now and the next time we meet to go through these. We're going to send this to our friends, see if we can get some feedback, and then that way next time we do the work experience, maybe we can at least make enough progress to finish up this first section, and then we'll focus on the leadership activities education, which shouldn't take too much time. I see a few things that we want to update here. Also, I want to understand if she's licensed, because if she's licensed, we're probably going to want to put that in one of these sections here, or have its own section for her licenses and her certifications. Um, and then what it also looks like from this section, we really want to make sure that we are showing at least 5 years of work experience. So there might be a couple of of these jobs that we can actually get rid of. And then also, once we've kind of finished up the experience section, as well as just gotten it to a place where it just feels good, then that's when we're going to go through our process of deep editing. What deep editing looks like is, one, making sure this resume is one page. Two, ensuring that we're using active language, ensuring that we're using great resume words, and that we're being very we're that we're using great resume words, and that we are using unique resume words throughout our resume, throughout our narrative. It's also going to make sure that all of our grammar is correct and our punctuation, right? So I save all of that to the end, and then we do a final spot check just to make sure that all of our dates are correct as well. And some of this is also going to change a little bit too when we start to apply that AP style. So that's it for this resume review. Thank you for joining us, and I hope that you learned something new, and I look forward to seeing you guys again next week. If you would like to submit your resume for review, go ahead and shoot me a DM and we'll get you in the queue. There are about 2 other resumes after this one that we'll be taking a look at. And then as we get more, I definitely want to increase the pace for these resumes. Right now, we're going at a pace about one a week, which it can take us a little bit of time to get through it. But if you thought about it, if we were to do a little bit of everything every single day, we could have a solid resume within 5 to 7 days for sure. So I want you guys to take this. Take a look at your own resume, see areas where you can make some tweaks and changes and answer some of these questions that we talked about today to strengthen your resume and increase your chances of landing that high paying job more quickly. So we will chat again very soon. Peace out.